Hey kids, we are back. I can't believe it's the middle of November. Ken, Mary, how are you and how crushing is it that this is holiday season? Like, does it
I
even feel like
know. It's so awesome. Thank you so much for having me on the show. It's great to be here.
Oh, so great to have you. Excited to have you and excited to talk about so many different things. And for a lot of people who don't know Ken and know about Ken, a lot of his info is in the player there on the screen, but he's a drummer, producer, engineer, and has been a record executive on over 35 albums. Dude stays busy. We like busy, right? Kind of keeps us out of trouble depending on what we're busy doing. He's worked with genres from heavy rock to choral music. Mary is best known for his work with acts such as Accept, Fifth Angel, Chastain, Take KO, so many more, House of Lords, Bonfire, even Alice Cooper. In fact, a lot of people don't know this, but Ken still plays with Alice Cooper under the stage while Glenn Sobel is miming. I'm just kidding. Actually, right now, what I'm really
I like that.
I'm also excited to talk about I Am the Weapon, the new album from Flotsam and Jetsam, the band that Ken is drumming of. This is really a great album. I want to start there. It just came out in September. Killer album cover. I mean, this is like a fantasy film, motion picture poster. This is just so album. For those who don't know, how would you describe the album as being a part of it from the inside, Ken?
Well, Flotsam and Jetsam has always been, well, they started out, I was always a fan of that band. And the first time I heard of them was 1986. And I was a big fan of them back then. And they were always very aggressive. They were one of the godfathers of thrash metal, is what you want to call it. I mean, back then it was just metal. We didn't subcategorize metal into 50 different categories. But, Flotsam was always one of the hardest, fastest, most aggressive metal bands. And so, I started working with Flotsam back in 2017, and our mission since that point has really been to create music that sort of brings us back to that. Flotsam has gone through a lot of different evolutions, and they've gone a lot of different directions. But we're kind of on the last 4 albums really back to just making the kind of music that's really there to rip your head off.
Well, the drumming certainly does. And we'll get into your influences and things like that in a bit. But what was the writing and recording process like of this album, Ken?
Well, it was, it's pretty much the same process we've had for the last few albums. And what I try to tell people the albums are like is imagine 5 guys in 5 incredibly fast race cars on a very narrow street, flying down the street with the gas pedal floored, all 5 going at exactly the same time. And somehow we get to the end of the street and we don't crash. Like, I don't know how it works. We really don't know how the chemistry works, but we just know that we kind of all just play whatever the heck we want to. And, we start working on the songs. There is like, I don't want to say like a procedure, but, we all have recording studios. I have like a major studio. So we do the drums and vocals and some of the overdubs there. And then the guitar players will record guitar at their house, and the bass player will record bass at his house. And I'll get all the tracks and assemble them all. And sometimes we'll clean things up a little bit. But for the most part, it's been a really easy procedure. The songs pop out really quickly. We're all 5 writers. Like, everybody writes. Everybody is a great musician. Everybody's been on like a ton of records. So it's something where, quite honestly, people say, well, is it hard coming up with a record? And I'm like, no, we could probably come up. We already have like half the songs for the next record just from working on this album. So it was a very easy process, and it's a very rewarding process in terms of, I do think I'm not joking when I say, like, we really don't know how it all works, because we're all doing whatever we want, and somehow at the end of the process, we come out with some killer songs. So that's really how it works.
That's awesome. The album sounds great. The production is great. The drums do sound killer. And man, there is some fast ass playing on there, but it's not a mess, of course. But what I mean by that is often I've heard some metal albums have a lot of really fast drumming, and every song kind of sounds the same, if you know what I mean. It's all just 30-second notes. This isn't like that. And before we get into some of your favorite songs on it and different things like that, let's just switch gears a little bit. Where does that influence come from? And then move into who are some of your first influences?
Sure. Well, for me, I always, I'm going to say something that's probably going to get us on blabbermouth, but I think, one of my major influences was Buddy Rich. And this is my thought. If Buddy Rich was alive today and starting out, he'd be a metal drummer, because metal is all about speed and precision. And that's what Buddy was all about. Buddy was not a swing drummer. People don't understand that he did that later because it
Yeah.
was the popular music. If something else would have been popular, he would have done that kind of
Yeah,
music.
it was something for him to fit into.
Exactly. It was a platform for him to do his magic. But if he had been around today, I'm totally convinced he would have been a metal drummer, because that's where speed and precision are pushing the envelope. And now we're doing things today that are ridiculously fast. I mean, I remember a time when we thought 200 beats per minute on double bass was impossible. And,
Right.
now we're doing, 240, all kinds of different tempos. So, it's really, drumming has pushed the envelope, but Buddy Rich is certainly a huge influence. Neil Peart was a tremendous influence on me. Also, guys like John Bonham, which, you wouldn't think that would influence somebody like me, but the fact that he had this killer groove, and for his time period, he was really a metronome for his time period. That was before drum machines and metronomes and click tracks were really used in the studio.
Right.
So, for me, if you look back, he definitely was a big influence as well. Those are three of some of my favorite drummers.
That's awesome. And on that note, before we get back to the album and move on to some other awesome projects you've been part of, that's a good time to show a video of you playing. Give everybody a little preview. Let's go with Stuff for the Masses, a little bit of that live. Check this out, folks. That's such a cool buildup. I just love that. That's great. And we got a couple more clips we'll show during the interview, folks. Going back to the album, Ken, do you have some favorites? I know it's like kids, and as you know, I have a lot of those, and you're not supposed to pick favorites, but do you have some of the songs on the album that you're most proud of or most fond of?
Well, I sure do. I mean, I have the album right in front of me, but yeah, let me take a look real quick. There's so many great songs, and this is one of the things that I've really loved about the last three Flotsam albums is I feel like, we really didn't put any songs that we didn't love on the record. We really tried to make sure that every song was, as a friend of mine, Mike Gobby says, all killer, no filler, like
Right.
he always says that. And,
Yeah.
and that's really kind of something we were aiming for. But I love, all the singles, like I Am the Weapon, A New Kind of Hero, Primal, Burned My Bridges. I also really love a song called The Head of the Snake, which has this really killer drum intro there as well. There's so many great songs. I could literally name every song in this album. I actually love every song on this record. And
That's cool.
but as far as favorites, if I was pinned down, maybe I'm the Weapon, Primal, Black Wings is another killer song, and Gates of Hell is actually getting played on satellite radio all over the United States now as well. So There's tons of singles that are out and doing well. So I'm sure whoever listens will find something they like on there.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's a
It's
great
really great.
Christmas gift. Nothing says "I love you"
That's
more
right.
than a Flotsam and Jetsam album.
And
And merry and happy holidays and happy Hanukkah and happy Festivus. Nothing says that whether you're 80 years old or 5 years old. Everyone loves metal, right?
especially when the title track is "I Am the Weapon," what would be a better gift, right?
Exactly. Everyone's going to love that gift.
That and "Run Through the Fire" are two of my favorites on the album. I blew through it 3-4 times from about 5 o'clock this morning, just
Wow.
taking it all in. Really great stuff. But again, the cover was just like, wow, this is just. You want to hear what the F word is on that when you have a cover like that, you know?
Yeah, and that's our artist Andy. He does an amazing job. He did the last 3, maybe 4 album covers. But he's a fantastic artist. He's out of the UK, and he always does a great job for us.
That's great. It's awesome when a band can have a relationship like that. Rush had Hugh Syme, Pink Floyd, many others had Hypnosis. Yes, for the most part, had Roger Dean. When you have someone that knows what the band is about, the music, the sensibilities, and they can kind of tether that into a different medium is really cool. I think there's a notable value to that chemistry, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. Let's show another video of Ken playing. Then we're going to talk about a whole other project and then a whole nother project. Let's go with this. I just love that. I wanted to show that, Ken, because when you look at the first clip and you look at that, right away you could see even just a glimpse of the versatility in your playing. Even in that one solo, there's a lot of different things going on there. And that always impresses me when people have different tools in their toolbox that are not all the same thing, which is really cool. Being what people mostly know you for, is there some music that you enjoy listening to that might surprise people? Like, are
Oh,
you a huge Spandau Ballet fan or something crazy like that?
yeah. Actually, what's weird? I mean, this is going to sound like kind of undefined, but I really love so many different styles of music. Even things like Frank Sinatra, and people go like, "How could you like Frank Sinatra?" I don't know. I just
Oh,
dig his voice.
yeah.
He has a great voice.
Yeah.
That's all, and then some of it really moves me. Like for music, for me, all I care about is I'm looking for music that just makes me feel something. And what is it supposed to make me feel? Like Flotsam is supposed to make you feel like energy and maybe a little bit of anger, whatever it is, like whatever the music is supposed to make you feel, does it make you feel that way? So I like classical music. I like jazz. I like, even there's, it's going to sound weird again, but I even like some rap and hip hop. Like if it's
Mhm.
good and,
Yep.
and I like some EDM stuff too. And people go like EDM, it's all programming. You're a drummer. How could you possibly stand that? Because if it moves you, then it's
Yes,
good. There's nothing wrong with it. If it moves you, it's good. And
exactly.
so,
Thank you. Yeah.
I think I'd probably surprise everybody with what I listen to. I'm just all over the map. I mean, there's just so many different things. And it's really weird. I don't think anyone's ever actually asked me that question before.
Really.
Yeah, I don't think
I
so.
always find it is an interesting question because a lot of times people think that the musicians they admire must listen to music just like those musicians play. And while that's the case to some degree, many are influenced by either completely different music or also listen to many other different things. So, being that you have those varied musical tastes, and folks, I'll get to the comments in a moment. Being that you have that much of varied tastes and you've worked with so many different types of artists from Alice to Accept and so on, how has all of that helped you as a producer?
Well, fortunately, as a producer, I was able to work alongside, and I've been a session drummer for years, really until Beat Detective kind of tempered, like
Mm.
now with our technology, you can have a drummer that's maybe not that great, and you can make them sound amazing with
You've
today's.
heard me play.
And that's, and I come from the era where you had to actually play, and
Right.
whatever you played, like if the snare was weak in a spot, or if you're, like, let's say, your timing wasn't exact, they were stuck with the track. So back in the day, before Beat Detective and Pro Tools, I used to work with all kinds of amazing producers, guys like Mac, who produced Queen, Michael Wagner, who produced Ozzy Osbourne, Janet Jackson, Megadeth. I think he even mixed down some Metallica albums. Mike Tachi, who engineered the Black Metallica album.
Right.
Terry Brown, who did Rush. I did
Rush.
the Earth
Yeah.
Angel record with him. I did 2 records with Andy Johns, who did a
Oh,
couple of small bands, Led Zeppelin and Van
yeah.
Halen. And Andy used to fire drummers all the time. I think he fired Kazi Powell. He
Wow.
fired like famous guys. So I was worried, about working with him. And by the end of it, one of my favorite things that ever happened to me in my life. Andy's a big hulking guy, or was. I think he was like 6'4" or something. And he got me in a headlock at the end of this, like we were doing Can't Find My Way Home on House of Lords album, which ended up being like number 6 in Billboard. And he got me in a headlock and he goes, you in Bonham, man, you in Bonham, just like this. And I was like, I was just floored. I mean, it's like something I will never forget because,
Yeah.
was one of my influences and one of the guys that, I looked up to. And to have the guy that recorded him, saying that to me was very surreal. And it's something, I always talk about it in terms of I will never forget that moment because it was such a, wow, to just be mentioned in the same breath with your hero was like, wow,
Right.
that was a big deal for me.
Right. That's awesome. That's great. Thanks for sharing those experiences and how they relate to the experience of being a producer. Here's a wonderful project I'd love for you to speak about. Put the cover up here. Kathy Rankin, Now You're Gone. If I'm remembering correctly, she lost her son at 18, correct?
Actually, her nephew, it was
Her nephew,
her brother's
her
son was
brother's son.
killed in a car accident. And, she wasn't, I just ended up doing an interview. So I kind of know a little bit in terms of what she was feeling, but she wasn't really sure, how to deal with that from the perspective of, how to interact with her brother. And so it's a really beautiful story. We worked on a song. She approached me about working on a song that was a tribute to Neil Peart. And of course, that's one of my favorite drummers of all time, a big influence on me. And, I was like, absolutely, I'd be happy to produce it. Let's make this happen. And then along with it being a tribute to Neil, it's also a tribute to her nephew as well. And I do think that the song has really helped a lot of people. Anybody that's dealing with loss or has been involved, I mean, none of us get out of this life without experiencing that. and
Right.
anybody who has had a loss. This is one of those songs that it's very heartfelt, and it's a very emotionally moving song. And that's really I call it a song with a mission. It's really to kind of it's a healing song, and it's a helping song. It's a song that helps you, deal with the grief, I guess would be the best way to describe it. And it ends with hope. And that's the other great thing about the track. But it's a fantastic track. She's an incredible singer-songwriter, and I encourage everybody to check it out. It's called Now You've Gone. Her name is Kathy Rankin, again, and you can find her on social media, on YouTube, on Instagram and Facebook. If you just search Kathy Rankin, you'll find her pages. But she's got a fantastic talent, and this was really I thought, in terms of a concept for a song, brilliant. This is her idea to do, a song, as a tribute to Neil and of course her nephew. And I think it was so great because it's a song with a mission, and there's not a lot of songs that you can say that about.
True. And Steven's going to drop the link to the video to that song in YouTube, which is a beautiful video. She has just a tremendous voice. Must have really been
fabulous singer.
Fun
and
to
also
work with.
Our good friend Dave Elfson from Megadeth. They only sold 20 million albums, and he was kind enough to play bass on the song. And the cool thing is we got to kind of show a lot of prog and put on our Rush hats for a minute.
Yeah.
And I was just talking about how I wasn't even sure if Dave could do that. I've known him for so many years, and I wasn't really sure if he could play like that. So I called him up and said, hey, can you play on this song? It's kind of, we're looking for like a Geddy Lee kind of bass track. He's like, yeah, man, I'll come down. I'll use my fingers. It's going to be awesome. And it is. He did a fantastic job. And then a guitarist named John Bronson played the guitars on it and just did a fabulous job. So I think the chemistry of everyone involved, everybody just did a fantastic job. And I'm sure that anybody that wants to check it out, it's a very moving track. I think you will definitely enjoy it.
Yeah, Steve will pop the link in there. It looks like he did. Thanks, Steve. And I'm going to read some comments. One of the things we always ask people where they're watching from. I'll give a shout out to a few. Oh, here's Scott Robertson. Hey, Scott. Hello, Ken. Cannot wait to hear the new Flotsam album. That new Flotsam album is so good. You've got to get to it, Scott, but not yet. Wait till after the interview's over. Then we've got James Kinchin in Philadelphia, PA. Sean Lynn Smith in Virginia Beach. UK chiming in with Matthew Blackout. Awesome. Thanks, folks, so much for chiming in. And then there's this, another great album cover. 3 great album covers, 3 great pieces of work in a row. Let's talk about this, since Neil's one of your biggest influences as well.
Sure.
So what was your entry point first for Neil? When did you get into Rush?
Well, that was one of the first concerts I saw was Rush. And prior to seeing the concert, I had heard 2112. And it was, at that point, it was had been out for a very long time. And I heard that album as a kid, and I was like, the drumming just freaked me out. I mean, I think that was the one thing that's awesome about Neil. My 3 probably most influential drummers, I think I've actually talked about them: Buddy Rich, Neil Peart, and John Bonham, and they're all completely different.
Yeah,
they're all like are stylistically completely 100% different. Bonham's all about groove, Neil Peart's all about the technical and the composition. He really taught me to think about composing, and that drums are they can be orchestrated, and
right, exactly.
They can actually be very musical, and they can provide something to the music other than just a groove. You can, and if you listen to what he composed in Rush, Permanent Waves was a huge influence, and Moving Pictures, I don't think I could say enough about that record. I think I saw them right after Moving Pictures. I think it was 1981, Seattle Center Coliseum. And it was fantastic seeing them. I mean, they really were, everything that I thought it was going to be, and just a huge influence. I mean, my first ever concert was Kiss, which I can talk about too, because I ended up working with Gene Simmons when I was in House of Lords.
Yeah.
That's another story, but I know that you've got the Neil thing up, so we'll talk about that. But
Yeah, no worries.
anyway, as far as Neil, huge influence, and I think the main thing that I take away from him is the composition. You go listen to. I am doing like an educational piece where I try to remove Neil's drums and try to replace them, and then try to make everything sound as identical as possible.
Oh,
And
wow.
now remember, they didn't play those songs to a click track, so
Right.
that's where it gets a little weird, because they did push and pull a little bit,
Yep.
and I had to know the songs so well that I'd be able to push where they pushed and pull back where they pulled back. And
Yeah.
it was a very interesting experiment, but I'm going to be posting those things soon. But and I'm trying to remember what the context of this was. I went off a little bit on a tangent, but
That's okay.
but as far as this album, are you asking me like what I feel about this
Yeah.
record, or?
Yeah.
Well, what is exactly? I haven't seen this, to be honest with you.
Yeah, this is, I think, very new, and I haven't seen the set list either, to be honest with you. I just found it real intriguing. Steve sent me.
Does this have Now You've Gone on it? Did they put that
I believe
on
so. Yeah.
Okay, so I do know what this is. Yeah, this is a number of songs that are tributes to Neil. I haven't really heard any of the other songs. I've only heard Now You've Gone. So I can't really speak to the other artists that are on it or the other songs that are on it, but it is a great honor to be on the record, and it's a great honor to be playing on this record, for sure.
Right. And folks, it's Songs for Neil, Volume 5, hence the Roman numeral 5 there.
Wow.
But I believe this is like the outside of the building, possibly on the cover of Moving Pictures. And if we zoom in, look what's inside.
Wow, it looks like Neil's kit.
Yeah, with the 2112 cover, or rather the 2112 logo cover. That was my entry point of learning about them. A friend of mine, I was 14. Album had just come out. He brought the album over. I was 13 actually, and it was like, what is going on here? And then Farewell to Kings came out, which in a way was quite a leap. I mean, obviously 2112 was from Fly By Night, but Farewell to Kings, and then I saw them on the Hemispheres tour twice.
Wow.
And it was just so good. The first time I was at Long Beach Sports Arena, but then I saw them either the next night or 2 nights later at what was called the San Bernardino Swing, which was an auditorium built out of an old airplane hangar where they used to have boxing matches. And it was so small compared to, it was like 25% the size of Long Beach. And they had no pyro or anything because there was just no room for it, no projections even. So It was two, really neat ways of seeing them right in a row. It was the first time I had ever seen multimedia like that in a show. But then the next night, it was like almost like going to a rehearsal or something, because there was none of that. It was really cool. And I just fell in love. I saw every tour, but I think 3 until they were done. Just tremendous influence of music. And let's not forget what amazing lyrical prowess Neil had as a writer.
Great writer, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what they would have been without that. That's just as much an element as their wonderful music, if not more, dare I say? I don't know.
Well, lyrics are incredibly important to music and to making you feel something and to bringing the emotion to it. So I would agree with you. I'd say without that lyrical content, I mean, it's hard to say. What would Geddy have done on his own? You can listen to the first album. The first album's great too. Working Man and trying to remember some of the
Finding My Way.
Finding My Way is awesome. I mean, there's so many great songs off that first album, and that's pre-Neil. So, would they? I think drumming wise, I mean, I think they certainly would have been a different band for sure. Like, I think Neil brought an element that was, very unique for its time, and really kind of showed all of us drummers, since that point, that drums can be an extremely important part of the musical composition of songs. And, if you're a writer as well, and I'm a writer too, like I play keys, I play a little guitar, I sing. So, for me, I do write lyrics, I do write melodies and all those kinds of things. And so I think that's definitely a good thing for drummers to know, that, try to be well-rounded, try to explore your other talents and try to develop those into something that's useful too, because you never know when you're going to be in a situation where, you might be called on to contribute artistically, and are you able to do that? And if you are, it's a great benefit, not only to you, but to your whole band.
Exactly. And Sean Lynn Smith's commenting for your first concert. Wow, what a first concert. That's true. That's a real treat. Brian Cahoon points out Lakeside Park was a good tune. He knew his bleep way back then. I know that you played at Lakeside Park, if I remember correctly, and I had the honor of being taken there by Don George, Neil's first drum teacher. I interviewed him in the first year of Drum Talk TV in 2023, and we went to Lakeside Park and tooled around, and it was really kind of surreal for me, actually, nice. To do that. That was really weird. Don ended up being kind of like, we got real close. He was like that long lost uncle, cool uncle that I didn't have. Not that my uncles weren't cool, but Don was drumming cool, and sure. Of course worked with a young Neil. But Stephen points out something interesting. He says, Songs for Neil, Volume 5. Amazing that there are 5 of these. And Steve's right. Neil was such a huge, influence on people in so many ways. His books, his music, his drumming, his lyrics, and everything. Really, really just great music. And
I would almost call him the Eddie Van Halen of drums, but the only
innovative.
Problem is I think I called Buddy Rich the Eddie Van Halen of drums. Well, when you think about, Neil is, no doubt, incredibly influential. I think Neil and Buddy are the 2 most influential drummers of all time. I think hands down. I don't think there's anybody else. Bonham's certainly 3rd, in my opinion. I just don't think there's any. Somebody might say Keith Moon, possibly. I'm just trying to think if there's anybody else at that level that you can speak about. But Neil,
I think I'm sorry, Ken, but when it comes to Keith, I agree, because I think Keith was more admired than he was emulated, because what Bonzo and Neil did, they lended more stuff for us to apply to music, whereas Keith was more of a spectacle, what am I going to do with that? I can't fit that into what my band is doing,
Right. Yeah, that's a great point. And I think a lot of his fame was actually attributed to his, I guess you want to call it psychosis. He's just such a crazy person.
Yeah.
That's really funny because, Alice, he talks about Keith Moon. They used to hang out quite a bit. And he said, look, how you hear stories about people and it's usually half true. He goes, anything that you've heard about Keith Moon
it's
that and 100 times more.
Right.
It's way more than what you ever thought it was. So yeah, I think Keith actually, for his particular situation, I totally agree with you. I think that was part of the magic of Bonham and Neil Peart was
you could use it.
Well, we can use it, and you could use it as an influence, and you could also emulate it. Like you can use it hey, I'm going to do this. I'm going to feel just like Bonham on this part. Yeah. And on this part, I'm going to use this crazy chop that Neil had. And, so I think you're right. There's not a lot that Keith Moon did that we can really apply.
Take and put into a song. It's like he was doing a drum solo with a backup band.
Actually, the one thing I will say is visually, I think Keith kind of taught us that, hey, you're not only drumming, you're putting on a show. And I think we all did learn something from that, for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was like he was drum soloing with a backup band.
Exactly.
Yeah. In fact, starting this week for a month on Drum Talk TV Brilliance, our membership site, we're running a Keith Moon drumming challenge. So watch for that promo to come out literally like any day, folks. Could be tomorrow, could be Wednesday. This is Monday, what's the date? The 18th, as we're live right now if you're watching the archive. So that'll be interesting to see what songs people pick to emulate and play to the actual recordings. But I want to show more of our guest, Ken Mary. This is Lead Me On. Check out some of this. right, that's just a teaser, folks. Look it up on YouTube. Give them some views. Buy the album. Do what you're supposed to do to support musicians. Absolute beautiful kit. Tell us what you're using now, Ken, and then I'd like you to give whatever advice you can for those who want to develop really great double bass pedal or bass drum chops. But let's start with what are you using these days?
Well, I have a Pearl reference kit,
Okay.
and it's 6, 8, 10, excuse me, I'm sorry, 8, 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And the
Cool.
kicks are 24 by 17. Snare drums, I have literally a case of like a million different snare drums. So
Awesome.
I mean, and that's the other thing. As a drummer, you cannot have too many snare drums. I mean, I've got piccolo
Right.
snares, I've got popcorn snares, I've got free floating snares. I mean, I have tons of different snares, and
That's
most of them are Pearl, but I do have some other. There's also a really great friend of mine, Rich Bloom, and he made a ton of snares for me, probably 4 different snares. They're called RB snares, and you can look him up. He great, awesome snares, and he's a great guy.
awesome.
He's off the East Coast, but super drums. I'm using Sabian cymbals, Aquarian drum heads, Vader drumsticks, and I think stick grips. That's the other thing that I'm using too. And let me see if I have one here. You can kind of see these.
Oh yeah.
They go over the drumstick, and you can have signatures on them and everything, but they do help you grip.
Interesting.
Yeah, like I do notice a lot of the newer sticks, the varnish on them is almost it's a little slippery, and so I use these to just basically make it easy to keep your hand, keep your grip.
Yeah. What size are those? 2A, 2B?
These are, well, I'm using 2 different size sticks. These are 5A Los Angeles by Vader.
Okay.
And then I'm also using I want to say it's like a 5BB something or other. It's like,
yeah.
that's a really good advertisement for Vader. What sticks are you using? I don't know, 5BB something.
Get the size that fits you, but get Vader.
Yeah, they're Vader, and they're heavier than those. They're a little bit longer and a little bit heavier. And I also use those like when I'm doing like more, Flotsam kind of stuff. That's just like more aggressive, heavier. I'll use the heavier drumsticks, and then the 5As I'll use if I'm playing something that's just a little bit more maybe jazz or prog oriented. I'll use the 5As.
Great. So how can someone develop great double bass skills, especially if for years and years they've been playing with one pedal, one bass drum, and if they're right-handed, of course, their right foot is more developed. How can they bring their other foot up to speed? No pun intended.
Well, I think a good way to do that, what I used to do in my high school band, which was, by the way, Fifth Angel, which ended up getting signed to Epic Records in 1986. I just thought I'd throw that plug in there.
Nice.
We actually had a great album come out on Nuclear Blast in 2023. But that's when we used to practice as high school kids all the time. And I would get bored at practice. It's just because, I knew the songs, and, it's like, okay, I know this. So I started just kind of closing the hi-hat and then using the ride cymbal, a closed hat, and then playing everything with my left foot. And that really is how I kind of started, I think, developing a good control in both limbs. Like obviously, you have to be as ambidextrous as you can in drumming.
Right.
But that I think was the beginning for me, was in high school, just getting bored and then just going, okay, I'm going to play. We have another rehearsal today. We used to rehearse like 3 or 4 times a week and then play gigs on the weekend. And so, when doing that, we were playing cover songs for the most part, and I would just get bored. So as a result of doing that, I think that was something that really did assist me in terms of, leaping forward a little bit. And then nowadays, there are a lot of different, there's a lot of different hardware that's available now. And I've seen some drummers like Lorna Shore where they're using double strokes and triggers, they're triggering the kick drum, and people go like, oh, that's cheating. And and that sucks, and drummers shouldn't do that. And I'm kind of like, I'll probably do it on the next album, just because, it's like, is doing a double stroke roll on a snare drum cheating? I mean,
Yeah.
is it cheating?
It's another tool.
No, it's not. So is it cheating on a kick drum? Like, I don't have a problem with it. Everybody's like, oh, it's triggers, it sucks, it's cheating. It's like, well, I don't know. I just think it's a different sound. It allows you to do something that's, physically impossible otherwise. So, if you have to do 260 or 270 or something like that, I've never seen anybody do that single strokes. So, you kind of have to, think about that if you're doing that kind of music. So,
you still have to have the timing and the precision and everything. I mean,
absolutely.
It's not like you're mailing it in.
Right. And that's what I was just getting to is some of the techniques and some of the things that are available are different now than they were in the 80s and 90s. Now you've got I have a bunch of different pedals. I've got the trick pedals that you can convert from a single pedal to a double pedal. I've got Axis pedals. I've got DW pedals that are chain drive. So I use a variety of different pedals. It's again probably not helping these companies, but I use a variety of pedals depending on what it is I'm trying to achieve. So that's the other thing too, is that recognize what it is you're trying to do. Are you trying to do, are you playing in a speed metal band and 240 is going to be your normal thing, like you're playing fast all the time? Then you might want to use, like the trick or the Axis, where you can do double strokes with a trigger. Are you doing, like if you're playing in a Zeppelin tribute band, you're obviously not going to be, using much in terms of double pedal. So it just depends on your application. But in terms of developing the skill, certainly playing with your left foot as much as you play with your right foot is good. And then, there's the old thing that even way back in the day, I was always doing rudiments with my feet. And that sounds like an obvious thing to do. I mean, but it is something that I've done probably since I was, 16 years old. And that's another thing that I think does help you just kind of refine, okay, it's okay to, to have one foot that works well, but does it work well with the other foot? And is the timing consistent? And are you solid? And that's the other thing, that if I was going to talk about one thing on the show and leave one impression with people, I always do this in clinics. Like if I'm ever doing a clinic, I say there's one thing that, in my opinion, is the difference between a good drummer and a great drummer. And that's your sense of time and feel. And so if you're a drummer, your job is to keep time. If you don't have a good internal clock and you're sloppy and your groove doesn't even lock with itself, like having to be a session musician and having to record in the studio constantly prior to there being technology available to fix things, I had to be super precise. Everything had to be super locked. And I remember one time I was at Amigo Studios and I was doing recording, and Jeff Piccaro was in the session right before my session. And I went in and listened to his drum track. And I mean, this is prior to, any ability to fix anything.
Yeah.
And that thing was a rock. And the drums sounded amazing. He had incredible tone. The feel was great. And it was right on the click, man. It was just like everything was in the pocket. It was locked. And, that's the kind of thing that inspired me. It's like, I want to be that kind of drummer where if I'm going to record, it's going to be locked. It's going to be in the pocket. It's going to be precise. It's going to be whatever I want it to be. And that's the one thing that really will allow that to happen, is if you work with the click. And I'm talking about, work that's boring, like just like doing rudiments, where you set an eighth note hi-hat and snare on 2 and 4, you program in a kick drum and you just lock completely to it. And I say there's 3 things. I call it crawling, walking, and running. So the crawling is you can totally lock to the click, but it might not necessarily have the greatest feel. Like you're just able to just completely lock onto the click and like maybe a drum program. And then secondly is if you can walk, and that's where you can play to the click, but you're going to actually play with feeling. Like now all of a sudden you're going to start putting in the dynamics, and you're going to start, the hi-hat's going to have a little bit of feel to it, and you're going to, things are going to just have more of a dynamic and groovy feel to it, and you're still going to lock to the click, but it's not going to be mechanical. And so that would be what I call walking. So you've got the crawling, the walking, and then running is when you can listen to the click. Like I've done so many records with so many producers, and I had this one, I don't want to say who it was, but I had a kind of crazy producer that was like, okay, I want the verse to be on the click, and then I want the pre-chorus to be a little ahead of the click, and the chorus to be behind, the click. So, and the weird thing is, I mean, first of all, it didn't make any sense musically. Like, unless the speed of the song was changing, like the times you want to be ahead are when you want urgency, and the times
Right.
you want to be behind is when you want to lay into the pocket. So, all that to say, the running version. So you got the crawling, walking, and running. Running is when you can do what I just described. You can play ahead of the beat. You can play behind the beat. You can play on the, click. You can play ahead of the click, behind the click, on the click. And you're using it. It's not telling you what you're doing. You're using the click as a tool. And so it's not pushing you. You're dictating to it what you're going to do around it. And that's what I call running. And so if there's one thing, like whatever your drumming style is, whether it's fusion or pop or jazz or, whatever kind of, or metal, especially for metal and speed metal, being able to lock to that click is critical. Like you have to be able to do that. And, so that would be the one piece of advice I'd give to everybody is, learn how to crawl, walk, and run with a click track. That's the most important thing you can do.
That's great. Great advice. We're going to show a little bit more of Ken's playing before we go to the last segment, the Ken Mary Fun Fact segment. Stay tuned for that in just a moment. I just love and personally enjoy what a great workout drumming can be, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. You'll never have to work out. Well, that's not totally true, but as a drummer, let's put it this way. Yeah. If you play in a metal band, yeah, you're not going to have to worry about gaining weight.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I'm having trouble keeping weight on. I don't know what is going on. That's kind of frustrating, but I'd rather have that than the other way. My kind of workout is I just love playing the old ELP and
Oh,
old Phil Collins Genesis and Yes and
awesome.
stuff like that. Just so much fun. Old Iron Maiden,
Yeah.
new Iron Maiden for that matter. What am I saying? Just some great drummers that have been in that band and just such great music, laying the groundwork for so much stuff moving forward. And it's really nice to see that metal is so alive still. It just gets better and better, I think. So last segment before we go, the Ken Mary Fun Fact segment. Here's the question, Ken.
Yes.
I know you're so busy with music, but I'm sure there have got to be slivers of time in your life where you're not doing music, you're not writing, you're not engineering, you're not producing, you're not composing, you're not doing session work, you're not rehearsing, you're not playing an album, you're not on tour. What is your thing to do other than nap? Completely away from music? Do you collect something? What's your deal, man, outside of music?
Wow, that's such a great question. I can tell you some things I really enjoy,
Okay.
that I don't really get to do that much. I mean, I love being at the ocean. I love boating. Boating is awesome. it's really weird because like when you say like, do you collect anything? Do you do anything else? No, I don't. It's kind of weird. Like music is sort of all encompassing for me. I mean, it's like, because either I'm producing or writing or touring or I'm always doing something musical and the good news is I love it. I mean, I love every bit of music except for the current state of the music industry, which is a whole different conversation. But as far as the industry itself, I mean, I don't want to even get into that part of it, but I will say the music side of everything. I mean, there's not one aspect, whether it's recording or writing or touring, maybe touring, I would say the travel. I'm not loving the travel, but performing, playing live, meeting the fans is like one of my favorite things to do. I love that. I'll sit there and sign stuff all day long. It's like, I just love, as an artist, the biggest honor you can have is when people are coming up saying, hey, I spent time with your art. Would you mind signing this? I'm like, of course, I would always sign it. And, so I think there's not one aspect of music or making music or being a part of something musical that I don't enjoy. So for me, the answer to that question is I'm kind of one-dimensional in that regard.
That's okay.
Chances are, if I'm awake and breathing, I'm probably doing something musical.
That's cool. Scott, I just want to mention Scott Robertson's watching from Connecticut, and Dennis. I don't know if I'm going to get your last name, Dennis, but Dennis D. Mage, maybe.
That's my buddy in Europe. He's in Europe.
He says, say hi to Ken from Netherlands. He's a legend. Buddy. Awesome. Thanks, Brian Cahoon chiming in, asking if you play any Mapex. I think you used to be with Mapex years ago, right?
Nope. Never was with Mapex. Nope. Here's the thing at festivals, when we're touring in Europe and playing some festivals, sometimes you don't have a choice of.
Maybe that's what we've seen.
So he might be referring to, maybe he saw me at a major festival and I was playing Mapex, but just so everybody knows, when you're endorsing a company, the first request you always put in is the company that you endorse. In my case, I'm always saying, if you have Pearl and Sabian, that would be great. And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't. More often than not, they do have Pearl, but sometimes it happens. So he probably saw me play a Mapex kit, but that's not the company I endorse.
Yeah, cool. Well, your drums always sound awesome. So does this album. Ken, tell them where they can get the album.
You can get the album. This is out on AFM. And I want to say that it's, of course, it's available on their website. It's available at Amazon. Last time I checked, there were a couple times it was sold out, actually. But I do believe it is on Amazon. I'm not sure if the vinyl is still available because I think we may have sold out of the vinyl. I don't know that. But certainly that would be one of the first places that I would check. And then check the AFM site and if not, just hit me up. I mean, we're actually selling on the Flotsam and Jetsam site. We're going to be selling signed copies of that record.
Great.
So
get that. I Am the Weapon is the title. It's kind of cut off at the bottom there, but the artwork is just absolutely gorgeous. Even this amazing font, that beveled font. I mean, this is truly a work of art. And the music is just so good on this. Get out and get it, folks. And Ken, thank you so much for taking time on a Monday to join us on Drum Talk TV. We'd love to do this again. There's so much to talk about with you. I would love to do this. And we're only like an hour and a half apart. Maybe we'll do this in person sometimes as well.
That would be so awesome, Dan. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
My pleasure. Hang on for a moment with me after we say goodbye. And folks, thank you so much for following what we do on Drum Talk TV, whether it's on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Vimeo, or X. And we're opening some TikTok channels in Q1 of 2025. It's going to be 2025. I think they skipped like 8 years or something, but looking forward to that. And of course, check out our membership site, which you could sign up for, where we have live stream concerts, fan Q&As. We'll have Ken be part of that. I'll twist his arm into that. We got live stream music trivia game shows where you can win great stuff. Great stuff. The next one is Saturday, December 7th. Music trivia series ending with a bang. The 60s, 70s, 80s. 3 rounds, 4 awesome prizes for the winner of each round. It's going to be tons of fun. Join us there. And lastly, the Drum Talk TV documentary, Our First 10 Years, comes out with the live stream watch party on Facebook and YouTube on December 8th at noon Pacific, 3 Eastern, and 8 p.m. UK. I'd be honored if you folks make some popcorn, crack a soda or a beer, Kool-Aid, whatever your thing is, and watch it with us. You'll learn a lot about Drum Talk TV you probably didn't know. See you, folks. Thank you.